Imagine a world without cities, without walls, without any of the protections we take for granted. A world where you are not at the top of the food chain. Long before civilization, early humans were just another animal on the savannah, constantly hunted and fighting for survival. This was a brutal, unforgiving world, and to make it out alive, our ancestors had to face down some of the most terrifying creatures Earth has ever known. These were monsters of muscle, fang, and claw beasts, so deadly that a single wrong move meant instant death. Today, we're journeying back in time to meet the apex predators that stalked our ancient relatives. We'll uncover how, against all odds, a small, clever primate managed to survive and eventually conquer a planet of giants. First, let's talk about the icon of the Ice Age, the saber-toothed cat. And when we say saber-toothed cat, you're probably picturing Smilodon, the most famous of them all. This wasn't just a big cat with long teeth. It was a perfectly engineered killing machine. Imagine a predator built like a modern-day bear, weighing up to 900 pounds of pure muscle, with a pair of dagger-like canine teeth stretching nearly a foot long. These fangs weren't just for show. They were designed to sever arteries and crush windpipes in a single, devastating bite. Smilodon didn't chase its prey over long distances. Instead, it was an ambush predator. It would hide in tall grasses or dense brush, waiting for an unsuspecting animal or human to wander too close. Then, with an explosive burst of power, it would launch itself forward, pinning its victim down with immense forelimbs before delivering that fatal bite. For early humans who had no armor, no rifles, and no steel, an encounter with a Smilodon was a nightmare scenario. Their only defenses were crude stone-tipped spears, the fire they had just begun to master, and most importantly, their wits and teamwork. Facing a Smilodon wasn't about being stronger. It was about being smarter. Our ancestors had to learn to read the environment, to spot signs of a predator's presence, and to use coordinated group tactics to fend off or scare away this formidable hunter. Every hunt was a gamble, and every journey through its territory was a life-or-death mission. But saber-toothed cats weren't the only threat lurking in the shadows. Imagine a predator that combined relentless stamina with overwhelming numbers. I'm talking about the dire wolf. If you're a fan of fantasy shows, you've heard the name, but the reality was even more terrifying. Tedire wolf, or Canis terris, was about 25% larger and heavier than the largest gray wolves alive today. It had a broader head, a more powerful bite, and thicker, stronger limbs. But its real strength wasn't just its size. It was its social structure. Dire wolves hunted in massive packs, sometimes numbering 30 or more individuals. They were masters of coordination, capable of taking down prey far larger than themselves, like bison and even young mammoths. For a small group of early humans, a dire wolf pack was one of the most persistent and dangerous threats they could face. If a single person became separated from their clan perhaps, while gathering food or fetching water, their chances of survival plummeted. The pack would work together to isolate the lone individual, cutting off any escape route. Their howls would echo through the landscape, a chilling announcement that the hunt had begun. The constant threat of these super predators forced early humans to evolve socially. They had to develop sophisticated communication, establish lookout systems to warn of approaching danger, and build more secure, defensible camps. The fear of the dire wolf helped forge the very bonds of community and cooperation that would become the foundation of human civilization. Survival depended not just on the individual, but on the strength and unity of the group. As if giant cats and massive wolf packs weren't enough, our ancestors also shared their world with a bear that makes modern grizzlies look small. Meet the short-faced bear, or Artides simis. This was quite possibly the largest carnivorous land mammal of its time. When standing on its hind legs, it could tower over 12 feet tall, high enough to look into a second-story window. It had long, slender legs, which suggests it wasn't just a lumbering brute. It was built for speed. Scientists estimate that the short-faced bear could run up to 40 miles per hour, fast enough to outpace a modern horse. It was an ultimate opportunist. While it certainly scavenged, its powerful build and speed made it a formidable hunter in its own right, capable of dominating any landscape it inhabited, from open plains to dense forests. Imagine being an early human out on a hunt, armed with nothing but a sharpened stick. Suddenly, you see this colossal creature rise up from behind a thicket. There's no outrunning it. There's no fighting it. An encounter with a short-faced bear was likely a one-sided affair. This forced our ancestors to be incredibly cautious. They had to learn the bear's habits, avoid its territories, and know when to abandon a kill rather than challenge the true king of the Ice Age wilderness. The presence of this giant bear shaped where humans could live, where they could hunt, and the level of constant vigilance required just to stay alive. Now let's move away from the icy plains and into the humid, tropical regions of the ancient world. They slithered through the undergrowth and lurked beneath the water's surface. In places like South America and Southeast Asia, early humans faced reptiles of monstrous proportions. We're talking about snakes like Titanoboa. It was an aquatic predator, an ambush hunter, that would lie in wait in shallow rivers and swamps. A creature this large could easily swallow an adult human whole. Every riverbank, every watering hole was a potential death trap. Ancient crocodilians, like Pyrrhosaurus in South America, were even bigger. This prehistoric caiman grew up to 40 feet long and had a skull the size of a small car. They had to adapt. Humans learned to build their settlements a safe distance from major waterways. They developed rafts or simple boats to cross rivers more safely, and they relied heavily on fire. Finally, let's look at a predator that seems like something straight out of a nightmare. They couldn't fly, formerly known as Farushrasuds. These were massive. The largest species, like Kelinkin, stood over 10 feet tall. They had powerful, muscular legs that allowed them to run as fast as a cheetah, and their heads were armed with a gigantic, hooked beak, sharp and strong enough to crush bone or pierce a skull with a single. They hunted in open grasslands. For early humans, a terrorbird would have been an entirely new kind of threat. It combined the speed of a cat with the striking power of an eagle. You couldn't climb a tree to escape. Surviving in a land ruled by terrorbirds required advanced hunting strategies. Our ancestors would have had to master the art of the ambush, using the terrain to their advantage. They needed to develop projectile weapons, like spears and atlatlatlas that could be thrown from a safe distance. The terror bird was a test of human ingenuity. When you look back at this gallery of prehistoric monsters, they were small, slow, and fragile. Yet, they didn't just survive against these incredible beasts. They thrived. They outsmarted the saber-tooth. Every tool they crafted, every social bond they formed, every story they told around the fire was forged in the crucible of fear and necessity. These terrifying animals were more than just predators. They were the immense evolutionary pressure that forced our brains to grow. In a strange way, we owe our intelligence to the very monsters that hunted us. And in the end, after countless generations of struggle, the most resourceful, adaptable, and ultimately the most dangerous animal on the planet was no longer a cat, a bear, or a bird. It was us. Thanks for watching.